It is time to check out and test out another solar generator, and today we are on the big workbench here because we got a big boy in this box here. This is the VTOMAN FlashSpeed 1500, and you can see from the quick stats right here that this is teetering on the edge of both portable power station and more like home backup power station. Now we know it's portable because I learned long ago that the definition of portable is it has to have a handle on it. And in fact, this one's got two handles on it, so it's doubly portable. But this FlashSpeed 1500 was sent over by VTOMAN, so I thank you for that. As always, we are going to review this thing honestly, and I'm going to give you my opinions on it. VTOMAN doesn't get to see the video before it gets published, and no money has exchanged hands. So with that out of the way, we're going to start off by touring around this box here because the box has a lot of good information on it, and it's going to go through some specs. And of course, once we get it open and check it out, we're going to test out all those specs. So let's start over on the right side of the box here because I think it's got some product highlights. And here they are. Let's read through these. 1500 watt AC charging. To charge this thing to full within 1 hour, that's pretty impressive speed. Supports up to 400 watts of max solar charging and 200 watts of max DC charging. That's pretty decent. Built-in long life and durable lithium iron phosphate batteries. That's kind of the standard these days, but definitely if you're in the market for one of these, you want to see that that's inside that power station. The battery capacity is expandable to up to double this, basically up to 3096 watt hours with the FlashSpeed 1500 extra battery, and that is sold separately, but it's just a plug-in extra battery to instantly double the capacity of this thing. It's got V-Beyond technology, which allows this to run resistive loads over 1500 watts, but no more than 3000 watts. Such as lights, space heaters, toasters, ovens, and coffee makers. It's got a built-in UPS function with less than 20 milliseconds of switchover. That's always a nice feature. We've got 3 1500 watt pure sine wave AC outlets. We've got 2 power delivery 100 watt USB-C fast charging output ports for laptop smartphones. We've got 3 regulated 12 volt DC ports to power anything that's 12 volt DC like car refrigerators, portable tire inflators, vacuum cleaners, etc. And a built-in 12 watt light with 5 lighting modes. So we got some decent product highlights. Let's go ahead and flip this thing around to the other side and look at these specs, which we already know most of them, but it's good to see them all listed out here. So battery capacity 1548 watt hours. So basically 1.5K or 1,500 watt hours. And that directly relates to how long this thing will run. Now I get this question all the time. How long will this device run my, you name it? Well, if you can figure out how many watts that device that you have uses, and you know what the battery capacity is, you can do some quick math to figure that out. But basically, the bigger number this is, the longer whatever that thing is that you've got is going to run. And 1548, that's a pretty impressive number for a portable power station. We already said the battery type was lithium iron phosphate. We've got an AC input of 90 to 140 volts, 1500 watts max. A DC input of 12 to 20 volts, 200 watts max. So that would be coming from like a, if you're going to charge it from your car or something. An Anderson input, that's going to be for your solar input, 30 to 60 volts, up to 400 watts max. Now obviously you need to make sure that your panels are compatible in this voltage range to get that 400 watts max, but we will test that out. 3 AC outputs, 1500 watts each. They will peak up to 3000 watts, but that's just kind of for surge. Overall, it is 1500 watts shared between those 3. Again, 3 DC outputs, that's 12 volts at 10 amps. For the car charger, they call it a car charger, but basically their cigarette light plug or accessory plug. And then we got 2 DC 5521s, which are also rated at 12 volts and 10 amps. We got 3 USB-A outputs, which are up to 12 watts. 1 extra USB-A output, which is 18 watts. And then these impressive USB-C outputs, we get 2 of those, which does all these power deliveries 5, 9, 12, 15, and 20 volts, all the way up to 5 amps or 100 watts max per port. So we'll test out both of those. We got an operating temperature of under freezing to up above 131 degrees, and then a charging temperature. You want to make sure that this thing is at freezing or above before you start charging it. And then of course we got some dimensions and the weight, 41.4 pounds, which is actually not bad for something with this much capacity. I was expecting it to be a lot more than that. But enough with numbers and words and all that weird stuff. Let's go ahead and open this thing up and see what it looks like. So here it is, the VTOMAN FlashSpeed 1500. And like I said, it's a big boy. It's got a couple big handles up here. But let's see what it came with. Of course, we got the user manual. I'm going to refer to that a couple times because there's some neat information in there. We've got a nice sheet of stickers. And then we've got a bunch of cables. We've got a very heavy-duty AC charging cable. We've got the DC charging cable, which has a DC plug on it. And then it came with a couple short USB cables, USB-A to USB-C, and USB-C to USB-C. Nice little added touch. A lot of these big power stations don't come with little USB cables here for your phones and tablets and stuff, but that's nice. And the first thing I noticed when I was checking this thing out, and we're going to look and take a quick tour of it, but the first thing I noticed was on top here, we got a nice little lid which pops up. And it's got a decently deep well here to store your cables. So let's give it a little test real quick, see if it holds every cable that it came with. Sure does. So very nice little added touch. I don't see that on a lot of these stations. And I can tell you, once you buy a couple of these are like tattoos, right? You either have one of them or you have like a whole bunch of them. There's like no in between. And once you start getting a whole bunch of these things, you end up with a bunch of cables and forget which ones came with which and which ones work with which ports and stuff. So having a nice little compartment here to keep them all in, that's awesome. So let's take a quick tour of the machine itself. Left and right side, not a whole lot going on there. We've got some ventilation for it. All your inputs and outputs are right here in the front. And then the only thing on the back side is a LED light. So we'll take a look at that in a little bit. But looking at all of our inputs and outputs, of course, we've got an AC input right here underneath this little dust flap. But also underneath there is the DC input and the solar input. And each one of those is listed right here with the input watt specs in case you forget them. Now on the back there is a label that has all the same specs that we looked at on the box, and that's always handy to have. But right here, basically all your inputs, and then all this around here is going to be your outputs. You got your DC outputs, so you got your car accessory port here, and your two 5521 ports with a dedicated DC button. We've got all of our USBs, the 4 USB-As, the 2 USB-Cs with a dedicated USB button, 3 AC ports here with a dedicated AC button, and then we've got these bonus ones over here. This one is a picture of a battery, so that's obviously where you'd plug in that expanded battery if you had one. And then we've got one here called jumper cable. So I imagine you can buy optionally, or this may be a standard connector for those leads that you can put onto, you know, the big alligator clips that you put onto your battery to jump start your car. Might be able to just grab this, plug it in there, and I'm guessing it must be sending 12 volts to this port here. So we may test that out with a voltmeter if I remember, just to see what's going on in that port. Let's go ahead and turn this thing on and see what it looks like. So the instruction said that any one of these buttons, if you just tap it once, the thing will wake up and go into a standby mode. So the screen should come on, and there it is. And it will stay in the standby mode for like 30 minutes and then eventually turn off. But if you then go and press any one of these buttons, just single press, short press, it'll toggle it on, it'll toggle it off. There's no long presses, no weird double clicks or anything. So each one of these, and you can hear the fan kick on when you turn on the AC inverter. Each one of these just a single tap to turn it on and a single tap to turn it off. So if you've turned it off and there's nothing reading on here as far as any of these actual circuits being turned on, this is going to be what they call the standby mode. The screen will blank out in a couple seconds, and then the whole thing, I guess, goes out of standby mode, it said, in 30 minutes. So we got 82% capacity. I think the next step should be we'll grab our cable. Where did I put them? Oh yeah, put them up in here. Grab our cable and plug it into the AC input, and we'll see how this thing charges up. Alright, so I got myself a cord here. This is not the one that came with it, but this is a heavy duty cord, and I needed to use this one because it's a little bit longer and long enough to get to an outlet where it's not going to be hopefully blowing anything. The one that's built into the desk here, I would not trust to pull 1500 watts. So let's go ahead and plug this AC input in. And it's woken up. And let's see this thing start to charge up. We're at 300, 600, 800, 1100, 1400. The fan's kicked on. 1662 watts. So we are definitely pulling over that 1500 watts. But so far, so good. Hasn't blown anything yet. And it shows a countdown timer here of how long it's going to take. It says 0.1 hours to get this all the way up to full. So I'm going to let that cook for a little bit. Let it charge up a little bit more. And just make sure it doesn't blow any circuits or anything. But it's holding here right around 1600 watts. That's pretty impressive. Alright, so this thing's been going about 5 minutes. And it's up to 90%. Still holding strong at this 1600 and something watts. So I've got no doubt that this thing could charge all the way up to full in about an hour. And so far, cable's not getting warm or anything. I got the fan over here blowing. It's blowing about room temperature air, so it's not hot at all. I gave it the smell test, and everything smells good coming out of there. I know it's not a very scientific test, but I always do it anyways. So yeah, this thing charges up like a boss. So what I want to do now is let's go ahead and kill this. And I'm sure that will take a couple seconds to get those fans keep on going to cool it down. And there it goes. So the next thing I'm going to do is test the AC output. So I've got a couple different devices here. Let me get those set up and I'll be right back. Alright, so I've got a couple devices here plugged in. I've got a space heater, just a small space heater, and I've got a heat gun, just a portable heat gun. The two absolute enemies of portable power stations. And we're going to test these out. And I'm going to do it first just as it's sitting here, not plugged in. And then I'm going to test the pass-through charging, which the manual does say it has. I'll plug the AC back in, and we'll see how it performs while it's trying to charge the batteries and deliver power out to these devices also. So let's go ahead and turn on this AC and get that inverter going. Let's start off with the space heater here. It's got two different speeds. I believe that's the low speed there. And it's pulling just a little over 200 watts. That's not going to be enough to test this thing out. Let's put it up to the high speed. So yeah, now we definitely got some heat going. About 500, 450 watts or so. And it says even with this 90% capacity, this could run for 2.7 hours. So whenever people ask me how long it's going to run a space heater, I just tell them it's not. You should never be running space heaters off of something like this. But if it was an emergency, at least something like this would be able to run for, 2.7 hours. If we put it to low speed, probably double that. So let's go ahead and add in this portable heat gun. I think it's got a couple speeds too. So that's nothing. We're only up to 600 watts. Let's get that going. So we got up to 750 watts now. About half the capacity that this thing is capable of. But I just want to see how it reacts. See if it turns this fan on here in a second. It still says 1.6 hours for two of these devices plugged in. And that math does work out, but it still impresses me. So I'll let these run for a little bit. Get this battery to drain a little bit more. See how the inverter reacts. See how the fan reacts. And I'll be right back. Alright, so this thing's been running for quite some time now. And this fan for the inverter still hasn't kicked on. So it is handling this load very well. Now, of course, this is only half the load that it's rated for. But still, I've had lots of power stations like this that kick on a fan, anything over like 200 watts going out of it. So handling 750 watts for, well over 5 minutes now, I'm pretty impressed. I may get curious a little bit later on to see how many watts I need to pull out of this thing before the fan kicks on, but for right now I'm just happy. So let's get this stuff turned off and let that settle down a little bit. The next thing I'm going to do, like I said, I wanted to test the pass-through to see how well it works with that. So we're going to get this plugged in again. And once it starts charging, I'm going to assume once I start adding these loads in that the charging is going to have to go down. I don't think it's going to be able to pull more than 1600 watts and then pass-through charge also, I'm guessing it's going to have to drop that 1500 watts output down a little bit. So let's see, we got 1600 watts coming in. Let's add in this space heater here. And yeah, so we got this down to 1200 watts coming in. It's not showing an output power, but we already knew that was going to be right around 300 watts or so, and that's tracking. So let's go ahead and add in this heat gun also. And we were showing about 750 watts before. I'm not sure exactly how many watts it's pulling. I would guess it would be about the same, but it's showing it's still got 930 watts coming in. So let me pause this real quick. I'm going to grab a power meter and just see how much power we're actually pulling from one of these ports and still being able to charge at the same time. Alright, so I've still got the AC input going in. We got 1645 watts showing on the screen here. I've got a power meter plugged in. I'm just going to use just one device here, and that's going to be this portable heat gun. So let's go ahead and crank this thing on. And it's showing 270 watts going out, and we still got 1370 coming in. So that does add up to be about that 1650 or so watts. So obviously with the max input of what they're saying is 1500 watts, whatever it is that you're pulling out of it is going to have to be reduced from what it is using to charge. Otherwise it would just be pulling way too much from the wall and you're going to trip something. But yeah, very impressive being able to run this heat gun and still charge this thing up at 1300 watts. That's pretty amazing. Alright, so the next thing I wanted to test out was the solar input, and we don't have any solar power here today at the house, so I'm going to simulate it with this DC power supply. So I've got a little cable here that's got all the different connectors on it, and the one we need is the Anderson plug. Now one thing I want to point out is you want to check the polarity. For whatever reason, this plug right here is not going red to red, black to black. So just make sure that you got the right polarity going into there before you send any voltage in there. But I've got the right setup here. I've got 40 volts set, and I've got it set to 5 amps because I don't have the right cables to plug into the back here to get 10 amps. Right in the front ports here, the little lazy ports, are good for up to 5 amps. So we're just going to simulate a 200 watt panel going in here. Now of course this probably has an MPPT in it. That's going to start searching around to try to find the right combination of volts and amps to make a good solar input. So we're going to plug it in. We're going to see these numbers kind of jump around a little bit. But let's see what we get. And it's woken up. It says that it's charging. And let's see what these numbers start to do. Looks like it's going to draw down this 40 volts a little bit until it finds the sweet spot. So we're at 33 volts, 5.5 amps, about 187 or so. It's showing about 207 watts coming in. And you might not be able to see that past this cable here. So we'll let that kind of settle down a little bit. And it's actually pulling pretty close to the 40 volts, 5.5 amps. And we've got 243 watts of solar coming in. Now, why is there a difference between this number here and this number here? I'm not sure. Could be a calibration difference. There's no logical reason why we should be getting more power in than we're supplying, but this is definitely a cheap power supply, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of inaccuracies somewhere in the line. But we are definitely putting 243 in. Let's go ahead and see if we can crank this voltage up some. And let's just go up to like 50 volts and see what the input does with that. And it's still pulling about that 5.5 amps. So we're getting about 300 watts in. Let's go ahead and crank it up a little bit more. It was good for up to 60, so let's go just shy of 60. And now we've got 360 watts going in. So if you had two 200 watt solar panels or four 100 watt solar panels, find the right combination of voltage and current to make it match the input parameters, then I've got no doubt you'll be able to get 400 watts coming into this thing. Alright, next thing I wanted to do was test out these USB-C ports here and see what we can get out of them. They're supposed to be rated at 100 watts each. So to help me out with that, I've got two little power stations here which are capable of charging at 140 watts input. I've got a couple cables here which are capable of 240 watts. So we're going to plug both of these ports into either one of these and see if we can draw 100 watts each. So let's start off with one here. Let's turn on those USB ports. Start off with just one cable, and we'll go to this green one on the left. And I'll read off the numbers because they're going to be kind of probably small on your screen. But it is charging. We've got 97 watts going out, 94 watts going in, so far so good. So let's add in this second cable here. And we'll plug that into this Anker Solix C300 DC. Give it a second to negotiate. And we've got 96 watts going in there, 94 watts going in here. So 189 watts going out total. So I would call that a success. That's going to be pretty much as close as you can get to the 200 watts coming out of those USB-C ports. And I'll let that cook a little bit and see how it performs. Alright, so this has been going on for a little bit and it's been rock solid. I mean, nothing has flinched at all. And USB-C can sometimes be a little quirky, but in this case, it's just working great. So if you got a couple big devices like laptops, tablets, or even more portable power stations here that you need to charge up quickly, you'll be able to get 100 watts per port out of this thing. Alright, next up I wanted to see what was going on inside these ports here. We've got this jumper cable input, which is not listed in this manual at all, but I'm presuming it's going to give, 12 to 13 volts out of there, enough to jump start a car. So let's go ahead and probe it and see what it says. And sure enough, 13.35 volts DC. So that's pretty cool. I'd like to know how many amps that this thing can support. Obviously enough to jump a car, maybe not a diesel truck, but who knows. So let's see what's on this. Now this is obviously the input for your external battery. But even though it's an input, I'm guessing it's going to go right into some battery terminals to make a connection. So let's see what kind of voltage is sitting there. And we're looking at 26.7. So basically like a 24 volt on this side, a 12 volt on that side. Pretty interesting. So the last thing to look at is this light that's on the back side. Again, we said that they got all the specs back here, which is nice to jog your memory in case you forgot what the input for your solar is. But we just got a light bar back here and a button. I think it said it had 5 modes. There's on, there's brighter, and warning, there may be some strobes, so if you are photosensitive, go ahead and look away now. That's a third brightness. That's definitely a strobe. And an SOS pattern. So this isn't obviously a very portable flashlight type situation, but if you did have a power outage in your house and you just needed some light, then this thing would certainly last a very long time. Alright, so we're just about at the end of our review here. I've tested out basically everything I wanted to test out. I did probe these before I wasn't recording, but yes, there is 12 to 13 volts on there. I didn't test them under load, but I did just throw a voltmeter in there and it was exactly what I expected. But overall, this thing has impressed me. Now I love reviewing devices that aren't, the top brands like your EcoFlow and your Jackery and stuff like that. I love checking out products that are budget friendly, that are names that are maybe not household names, but companies that are just making great products, and I would definitely put this in that category. If you are looking for a home backup or something for camping, and I would say multiple day camping in this case, then this would definitely suit the bill. If you had a power outage at your house and you had this thing fully charged up, you'd be able to plug a refrigerator in there, keep your internet up, have all your devices charged, and it would run you a decent amount of time with this 1500 watt hours. Not only that, but with the charge speed how it is, that 1500 watt input, and we were actually saying 1600 watt input, if you did have an extended power outage and you did have access to a gas generator, you could charge this thing up in an hour and then turn off that generator and use this thing all through the night, so you don't have to have a noisy generator running through the night. Keep your fan on, keep your internet up, have a couple lights plugged in, and that should last you through the night. And then the next morning, go ahead and crank up that noisy, smelly gas generator, top this thing off again, and have it running through the day. And then if you've got 400 watts worth of solar panels, plug those in, you'll be able to keep this thing topped up through the day anyways. So again, very impressive. I was impressed by the amount of power it could both bring in and put out and still handle the load and handle the heat. The USB-C ports worked exactly as advertised. Got some nifty features over here. You want to extend the battery life even more? Double it up by just buying one of those extra batteries. So like I said, I like reviewing these things, especially when I just don't find anything that's wrong with them. It's just an all-around great device. So thank you again to VTOMAN or VTOMAN for sending this for our review. I had a lot of fun reviewing it, and I would consider it a success. So hopefully this video was helpful to you. If it was, I appreciate a thumbs up. That helps out the channel. Let me know what questions you have. Go ahead and drop those down in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer anything I can. Go ahead and check out the rest of the channel. I've got lots of other reviews on power stations, power banks, solar stuff. There's more reviews coming, and just a bunch of other geeky stuff on the channel. That's going to do it for this one. I thank you as always for watching, and until next time, peace out and geek out.